Today is a special day. We have another officer in class today. Our very own Ikshu Sharma just became a civil servant. Are you there, Ikshu? It was just yesterday we received the wonderful email from Ikshu where she mentioned that she got 10th rank in the Jammu Kashmir Civil Services exam. I think J&K is one of the states in India that is in need of honest, motivated civil servants. And I'm fairly certain that Ikshu will stand for those ethos and values that we stand for at Misfits. This is perhaps an opportunity for her to work towards creating an India of her dreams. I will of course not invite Ikshu for podcasts to discuss what books to read or how to write answers. There are so many IS officers who do that only. Hardly work. We will of course invite her in time to come for the work that she might do in J&K with the opportunity bestowed upon her. Very few people get this opportunity, and I'm so proud that Ikshu today has that opportunity. Simple, our country will succeed only and only if we have good people occupying important positions. And as civil servants, you have all the rights and privileges. Many of the civil servants are aware of those things. Still, they lack the spine. Now, I have this crazy idea in my mind. I'm actually thinking of hiring McKinsey BCG consultants to do some consulting work for Misfits. The way HUL or Reliance hire these consultants to improve the efficiencies in their companies. Perhaps McKinsey consultants at Misfits might improve your efficiencies. They might undertake benchmarking exercise of connecting with UPSC toppers, reading through answer keys, and then perhaps help me design patterns that each one of you should learn to maximize your score in mains answers. My only request from you all would be, please clear prelims next year. Give your heart out. It is my duty to make sure that scientifically you get the highest marks in this examination in the history of UPSC for mains and interviews. Those are the papers where ranks will be decided. Give your heart out in prelims. Please watch recordings of all these classes multiple times. Once the core syllabus is done, I will request you to solve papers also. We're already solving papers from past year, but then we will also look at some ancillary papers that CAPF conducts or CDS asks for. Many times these papers conducted by UPSC, they tend to repeat many patterns. Just clear prelims, complete your optional syllabus at least once, to an extent that you know what needs to be studied in the 3 months break between your prelims and mains. And I will make sure that you score a really good score in your mains and interviews. You have an edge that no one has. Make the best use of that opportunity. So coming back to Ikshu, how are you doing, Ikshu?
Thank you so much, sir. I think you're giving me way too much credit. I'm okay. Actually, I'm fine. But thank you so much. I received your wonderful email also. And J&K Civil Services, I think since 2018, they have really shifted onto the entire UPSC pattern. So the entire syllabus is based on the UPSC syllabus. And this year, they actually even conducted it in the manner like UPSC does mains, 2 exams in a single day. So this never happened before in J&K. But this year, they even moved that thing. So it was literally like I went into thinking, okay, let's think of it as a mock. But I never expected like rank 10 because honestly, I wasn't so prepared. But I think it feels good. But I'm really... Actually, I was mailing you yesterday because I didn't want you to think that I'm bunking classes, But that's it. Thank you so much for your encouragement, really.
Anyone has any questions, any thoughts for Ikshu? Okay, Twinkle?
Hi, Ikshu. Congratulations. Listen, I'll just ask you an honest question. When you say that you didn't study so much, I think you're just being humble because I don't think it's a little bit possible that you still say that you were not prepared. So anything that really helped you take off the edge per se, Like, which made you like calm?
I'll tell you, it's actually very funny. And we had our mains going on in the month of February. I remember we had just started off our classes, and I had asked sir at that point, is it okay if I miss out on a few lectures? And that time I had said that it was because of my book launch, and it was actually that, like, I had written 3 days straight mains, the general studies paper, and then we had a gap of 5 days. But I had to like fly to Delhi for my book launch, and then I had to come back, and I really messed up my first optional paper. And I was like, no way I'm getting into the list this time, forget like getting a rank. But taking the edge off, yes, I think like since I finished my masters, I had really started thinking I want to study for UPSC. But like all those kids, I was really taking a lot of stress. This year I decided I will just relax and enjoy the process. And I was writing, and I was traveling so much, and I was studying while traveling. Like, I was in one place, then I would like look at the geography. I was in Ladakh last year for a month, and I was looking at the place, looking at geography, revising. So I really, I think that is what helps you take the edge off. And when Naman sir keeps talking about, who's anxious, I was like, I was there. But this year I was a bit relaxed. So I think it's very hard to get into that, that I'll keep calm. Obviously, it doesn't come easy. But I think it pays the maximum dividends in this process. Baki, I don't know. I think it was luck.
No.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I think anxiety point is very, very well mentioned here. Just think about this. How productive you can be if you can control your anxieties. And it is the easiest of all things. You don't need to study for that. You don't have to worry about so many ancillary things. Just if you are calm, composed, meditating, working out physically, having a good support system, you're already ahead of 95%, 96% of people in this journey. Now, this pertains to a few emails that we have received. And this is around the fact that almost all of you are having good time analyzing newspapers, especially the economy section. However, you do have concerns about polity and international affairs. For polity, I can agree because we have not covered some of the basic fundamentals. But for IR, that should not be the case because it connects beautifully well with economics. So just to call out on people, just to check how much of newspaper reading are they doing. Tell me about BRICS, what's happening in that segment. Tell me the new countries that might become part of BRICS. What is this? What is this grouping? Don't stress. I'm just putting pressure on some of you so that you can now diligently start reading newspapers. It's fine that you're relying on Misfits for many things, but there are certain things that you should do on your own. Newspaper reading is not just about cramming things. It's about analysis. And you have to do that in your CSAT paper. Many of you will perform really well in general studies paper, but what about CSAT? If you're just reading newspapers, comprehending those newspapers very well, you'll be easily able to clear CSAT paper, despite not knowing any mathematics, because a large portion of reading comprehension also comes in. And almost all of you are writing this examination in English language. You have an edge already. Think about people who do not speak or understand this language well. 6 new countries for BRICS. See, I'm not stressing you out. You have a lot of time, but this is an important topic, not just for today, but for many days to come. Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi, UAE, they all have been invited to become members of BRICS. I think the membership will take effect from January 2024 onwards. Keep an eye out for these countries. Look at their map. Look at their positioning in the map. Are there strategic trade routes around those maps? Because a lot of thinking goes into identifying who to admit and why to admit. Not just the thinking from the side of China, but also from India and South Africa. Think about this. With the admission of these new countries, new trade routes will open up for these economies. Strategic trade routes. Suez Canal, Red Sea, Persian Gulf, North-South Corridor. Do you know US Navy? I do have a lot of friends in the US Navy. All the US Navy officers, they attend Fletcher School for the mid-career training. US Navy has been strategically encircling China with military bases on various islands around China. What will China think? How will they want to neutralize that strategy? Does inviting these countries to join the forum help China in any way? Or does it help China more than India? There are various clauses in that BRICS arrangement. Clauses pertaining to sanctions. Those become important. With new countries coming in, China can perhaps secure its trade routes, both over land, over sea, through Arctic. Who benefits the most from something called de-dollarization? You should have views around these points. These are important points, not just for your mains, but also for your interview. Brazil's president has said this in the past. Every night I ask myself why all countries have to trade in dollars. A president of a country saying that. One of the goals of this grouping is also to perhaps settle trades in local currencies. They are smart. They don't want to create a new reserve currency, but they're actively seeking ways and means to bypass dollars. Read any newspaper article, be it from China or Georgia or Russia. I do that reading once in a while. Similar stories. China doing something with Brazil in yuan. Saudi Arabia considering yuan instead of dollars. India will buy oil from anyone who offers the lowest possible price. What does it mean? What does it mean for US dollars? Will this be enough to break the petrodollar monopoly? This grouping? Some of the people, some of the analysts, they have such a highly optimistic view about BRICS. But is that a reality? What has BRICS achieved, by the way? It's been in existence for a long time. What has it achieved? Many people rightfully ask, can these countries even work together? Look at NATO or G7. Common ideologies bring them together, right? Be it of democracy, human rights, but at least there are some ideologies. And here you have China, Russia, Iran, polar opposites to Brazil and India. Iran is a theocracy, India is a democracy, Russia is an oligarchy, China, I don't know. What is it? Depends on where you are from. Strands of communism, state capitalism, dictatorship. What's their ideology? China and India don't even look eye to eye on many matters. Some countries in this bloc, the new ones of the BRIC, are close allies to the US. There is anti-China resentment, not just in India but also in Brazil. China is an existential threat for India, by the way. What does it mean? Any thoughts? When I say China is an existential threat for India. Swati?
Economically and militarily, they are an existential threat because they are openly hostile to us.
Is that it? 62 war. Look at the strategic influence China is having over South Asia, especially with Pakistan, Nepal, Maldives. Strategic encirclement of India is happening. We are two of the most populous countries in the world. Growing economies. What do you think will happen? Resources are always constraints, right? Not unlimited. Be it energy, be it minerals, be it trade routes. We will compete for resources. Bound to happen. This is the mindset with which you have to read any newspaper article on BRICS. Look for the positives, look for the negatives. Resentment is also growing in South Africa against China. And what is de-dollarization? What is it? Anyone, any thoughts? There's a lot of talk about it. There's a lot of optimism about it. Ishan?
Sir, I think it is related to the concept of taking the global economic system and shifting it away from the US dollar, how most of the transactions are based on the US dollar and how most of the currencies are also linked to it. So slowly taking that away from the US dollar and shifting it to local area-based currencies, such as that of Asia, Africa, South America.
And is that happening? And by the way, There are just few of you who are actively participating in classes. This should change. You're putting in so much time, effort. Make the best use of it. Believe me, more you speak, more you engage, more you will retain. In mains interviews, retention is important. Within 5 minutes, 6 minutes, you have to come up with quick points for every answer. It won't happen if you're silently, passively listening to discussions. So please be active. You will be wrong, that's fine. But that should not deter you from participating in classes. You all know of Swift, right? What is that? Swift. Not the car. Whenever you go to a bank, you need a Swift code to transfer money. If you were to open a bank account in, let's say, Istanbul, Tirana, Skopje, any part of the world, Swift is needed. If you look at the data, you would realize that Swift volumes on US dollars, just a few months ago, it was largest ever in history. What does that mean? It means US dollar still remains a dominant global reserve currency. What is Swift? What does it stand for? I'm not kidding, this can be part of your prelims question. It's the full form of it. UPSC has a tendency to ask such ridiculous questions, so you should know everything about everything. What does it stand for, by the way? Anyone knows? Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. It's a primary global way for international bank-to-bank transactions. High volume of US dollars transaction on Swift. It reflects US dollars dominance. Clearly indicates businesses are settling their international invoices in US dollars. Can be many other conclusions you can make out of it. When you join BRICS, when these countries join BRICS, they also agree not to sanction any other member of the group. What could this mean for India or China or Russia? Does it make any sense for India to be part of this group? So when you're reading newspapers, go in with this mindset, this holistic understanding of things. And then you will make a lot of sense. Otherwise, you're mechanically reading newspapers. Not fun. And until and unless you're not having fun in this UPSC preparation, you're wasting your time. You're being forced into this preparation. And therefore, your first task should be to fall in love with subjects. How to do that? Simple ask. Watch through recordings for Misfits. I assure you, you will fall in love with subjects. You'll start seeing the world differently. And that is what is needed. How many of you have read this newspaper article? Very interesting article. On Indian Express. With strings attached. Anyone read it? So newspaper reading has to be done. Couldn't have done that reading. You need to have views on these topics. These can be your potential questions in the examination. Today, Government of India is turning to global consulting firms for advice, right? Who are formulating policies in India, who are implementing policies in India. In many cases, these are not IAS officers. In many cases, they could be McKinsey, BCG consultants who are doing it. For Smart Cities mission, it was McKinsey that helped conceptualize, design the blueprints. Shipping projects led by BCG in India. For GST rollout, it was Deloitte, PwC, KPMG that were involved. And why are we joining IAS? Is it just India-centric thing? No. Government of Saudi Arabia came up with something called Vision 2030 strategy. Do you know that? There has been a question in UPSC about this, by the way. Vision 2030 strategy, Saudi Arabian government. It is dictating many of the Saudi's policies. McKinsey was hired to formulate it. Not just in Saudi or India, UK hired many consulting firms to analyze and advise on the effects of the Brexit strategy. Logistic issues that the country could face. United States has been hiring McKinsey for many of their domestic policies. Affordable Care Act. McKinsey consultants, some of my friends were involved. And my question is that a good thing? Is it good to outsource thinking? Today, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare is using World Economic Forum to design think, a very important policy for India. Now, my question is, who controls World Economic Forum? Because these organizations also have agendas, right? Congress's government in Punjab hired JPAL to reduce the groundwater withdrawal. What is JPAL? Stands for Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab. Do you know who was Abdul Jameel Latif? A Saudi Arabian businessman. He founded Abdul Latif Jameel Company Limited. This company was not into policy making or policy advising. It was a small trading company. Of course, we associate JPAL with Abhijit Banerjee, Esther Duflo, MIT. But the question is, who funds it? It's not an elected body, right? Do they come under RTI purview? All we know is that they conduct randomized evaluations with the goal to improve effectiveness of some programs. The goal is to alleviate poverty. But how can we assume all of that is being done in good spirit? Because they're also nudging policies, right? By leveraging onto those RCTs. And we all know how econometrics analysis are done. I mean, at least I know that because I studied that in length. There are many individual donors and we don't even know their names. Are we sure that George Soros does not provide any funding to JPAL? I don't know. Of course, there is an aspect of direct funding, but there is also an aspect of indirect funding. What could that be? We all know that George Soros runs Open Society Foundation that in a way funds many other NGOs, education initiatives, be it Human Rights Watch, be it Transparency International, that's open out in the market. Rural Media Network. But these organizations also hire consulting firms. And when these organizations hire consulting firms, what's happening? It's an example of indirect funding. These are the same consulting firms that our government might hire to work on Punjab groundwater problem or give recommendations on India's tax policy. This is happening. I'm not accusing any of these consulting firms of anything. In fact, I have myself been part of such consulting firms. And I've been on the client side of many of these consulting firms, not just in India, but also in Serbia, Macedonia, Albania, because again, it's not an Indian thing. So why sons and daughters of many ministers are part of these consulting firms? Can there be any kind of quid pro quo? You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Nariman Sandhya, son of a civil aviation minister, he was in BCG, employee of BCG. Isha Ambani, employee of McKinsey. Harshita Kejriwal, one of the prominent politician's daughter, again BCG. In fact, many senior civil servants, their sons and daughters are part of many such consulting firms. Why? The point is, many will use this rationale and reasoning, and you will start doubting what is happening in India. But there can also be counter arguments that they will come up with. Sindhya went to Yale, a target school for BCG. Harshita went to IIT Delhi, target school for BCG. Isha Ambani, Stanford, target school for McKinsey. There will be narratives that will now set in motion to ban these consulting firms. If I were to ask you this question in UPSC examination, would you stand for banning these organizations? How will you respond? I've given you some hints, some logic, some facts. I've cherry-picked some data. Cherry-picked is the word that I'm using, by the way. What will be your response? Should we ban these organizations? In fact, McKinsey is known for its interesting advisory in the US. I think one of the books went viral. When McKinsey goes to town, what happens? Ayusha, any thoughts?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Sir, when you're asking about banning, so banning appears to be an extreme word for me. But yes, as the facts which were just told by you, so yes, I would like to consider putting proper checks whenever and wherever we are hiring, like whenever we are starting to hire such firms, starting from like a proper format should be made as to why we are hiring, outsourcing it and not like sourcing it from Indian firms only, and what are the conditions. And I would like to put
See, I know how tendering works. In such cases, they will look for global officers, number of full-time employees, and all these firms will have much better data in comparison to Indian established firms. But you're right, banning is never the solution. It's never a solution for anything, in fact. Putting in relevant checks and balances are very, very important. The role played by these consulting firms is also very important. I'm not saying this just because I've been part of these firms, but I've also seen the good work that these firms have done. Of course, there are many fallouts, but again, banning never the solution. From problem solving to benchmarking, to change management, to data analysis, to stakeholder management, these firms have brought in a lot of global innovation in our own country also. These firms do provide a lot of economic value, no doubt about that. And that is perhaps the reason why not just Government of India, but also foreign governments continue to hire them multiple times for multiple engagements. So saying this, ban them, ban this, nothing will happen in this country. However, there should be checks and balances. Now, one question that I want you to ponder on is, do we have those checks and balances in India for these firms? That is when your role becomes important. You all should know of the situation. You all should know of the problems, but you should then also be part of the solution. It is in this context, I think Ajay Thakur wrote a very interesting piece that senior civil servants should be asked to provide an annual confidential disclosure if any of their close family members are employed by these advisory firms. And if such firms are being considered to be engaged by the department, then this disclosure should be made public. Today, we are living in an India where lateral entrants in the ministry who came in, joined in as JS, Joint Secretary, important position, worked in the government for a few years. Do you know what has been their exit? An advisory role with McKinsey. Should be some disclosure. Why? What happened? Why was this taking place? CAG should get involved. That is what he recommends, Ajay Thakur. And I agree with him. Think about this. Government provides so much access to these consulting firms in terms of data, secretive data, to priority data, not just that, a lot of money. I agree that many of these consulting firms do pro bono work as well, but nothing is free. So CAG or any other suitable agency must audit the outcomes of these contracts. Doesn't happen today in many cases. Be it Congress, be it Aam Aadmi Party, be it BJP, governments led by these parties will continue to hire consulting firms, and they should and they will. Has a good argument behind it. And a country will benefit if this is done in the right spirit. But you of all the people should understand that you serve people of India as civil servants. You're not serving these consulting firms. You're not serving the opposition party or the ruling party. People of India, how will they benefit? Because they don't understand the nitty-gritties. So as a civil servant, the potential ones, you should have views on how will you introduce those checks and balances. So whenever you stumble upon an article or newspaper item or any thoughts around this topic, that is how you should think. So I think this gives you a sense of how you should read newspapers. What role are you playing when you're reading newspapers or analyzing any debate? Just have fun. Think of yourself as someone who is part of the civil services already. And how will you come up with solutions? How will you identify the potential problems? And if you do this on a daily basis, just imagine the kind of expertise you will develop. There's no reason why you should not be clearing this examination, at least from content standpoint. Now, from presentation standpoint, I'm going to hire a few consulting giants myself. And we'll work on it when your time comes to write the mains examination. Now, let's come back to economics. So economics is so well connected with all the subjects. And there will be no pre-reads for economics. Otherwise, you will definitely not learn what I intend to teach. Everyone has a different style and methods. I have absolute faith in my method. And therefore, just trust us in the process. You will augur the benefits. So in India, public sector banks have historically dominated credit creation in the economy. Many newspaper articles, even the economics